Thank you. My name is Zeynep Tuncer. I'm a sophomore at MOT Charter High School. So the person I want to talk to you about today is one of the most influential women in the history of Islam. She was the Prophet's daughter, the wife of the fourth Khalifa, and the first woman teacher in all of Islam. First, I want to include a short biography of her life, then go on to explain why I picked her as my role model. The name of this person is Fatima. Born around 605 in Mecca, she was the only one of the Prophet's children who outlived the Prophet himself. When her mother, Khadija, died, she took such good care of her father that she was given the title of Biha, and this means the mother of her father. Even as a child, she was an example to everyone, as can be seen in this example. After Khadija died, the Prophet married Salama. Salama was asked to tutor Fatima, and when asked, she replied, "How can I tutor one who is the personification of high virtues and purity? It is I who should learn from her." During her childhood, Fatima faced many hardships. The enemies of the Prophet constantly harassed him by cursing at him, throwing stones, and beating him. And this increased when Khadija, his wife, and Abu Talib, his uncle, passed away. Each time this happened, Fatima would take care of her father and she would tend to his wounds. Even though she saw how her father was treated, she was never discouraged, and she always had faith in him and in Islam. Her family was mocked and humiliated every day, and yet she still went through with her faith, and she always had faith. When she was about 18 years old, suitors started asking her father for her hand in marriage. But the Prophet turned down each of them politely, as he was waiting for a sign from God. Then it was seen that Fatima was the model for young women at that time, and Ali was the model for young men at the time. So it was seen that after Fatima's consent was gained, they got married, and they moved to a house that was close to both the Prophet and the mosque. They had 4 children together named Hassan, Hussein, Zainab, and Kulthum. An idea of how generous a family they are can be understood of how they had to fast for 3 whole days because each time someone new would come to their door, first it was a beggar, then an orphan, then a prisoner, and they each asked for food, so they gave it all away. So the Prophet had a lot of admiration for Fatima, and whenever she arrived at the mosque, he would stand up in respect to her. This wasn't just in respect to his daughter, but in respect to women at that time, because it was really uncommon for women to be respected in the Arabian society. Every morning, the Prophet would go to the front of her house and say, "Peace and blessings on the people of the household of the Nabi." The Nabi would be like the Prophet's kin. So the Prophet did this so that he could show to his companions that the house and its occupants were very special to Islam and to Allah, and that they would be respected after his death. The way Fatima died was told in a very moving manner by Asma Bint Umais, who was someone that stayed at their house and helped with household chores. Fatima had just prepared food and told Asma that she was going to pray. Fatima would usually say takbir, which is a greeting to Allah, loudly at certain intervals. So when Asma heard nothing, she went to check in on her and found that she had passed away. After she told Ali, she went back home to feed the children, and the children said that they wouldn't eat without their mother present, and then she had to tell them that their mother had died. As Ali was bathing Fatima for the last time, he cried very loudly, and it is said by some historians that she was buried in her own home, which is now the Masjid Nabawi. So Fatima led a very hard yet admirable life, and she's known by 2 different names, Zahra, which means the Lady of the Light, and Sayyidatun Nisa al-Amin, which means leader of the women of the world. She set the example for how a wife, daughter, and mother should be, and the importance given to her shows her virtues. So although the Prophet was mocked for not having any sons, Fatima was very important in his eyes. And she was the one who to continue the family line with her children, and these were the only grandchildren of the Prophet. There are certain parts of Fatima's life that I would like to point out, and these are what inspired me to write about her. The first is that she was a teacher. At a time when women were degraded and given little to no worth, she was a teacher, and she would take the knowledge that she learned from the Prophet and teach it to both men and women. And another important characteristic is that even as a child, she respected and took care of her father as if she was a grown woman. Her personality is also very admirable, as she never lied and was pure of heart.
She was the first woman who learned Islam firsthand from the Prophet himself. I want to be able to manifest her values and virtues in my daily life. I want to be a caring daughter to my parents, a friend and a teacher to my friends and siblings, and sincere and devoted member of my community. I want to show to the world that role models like Fatima show that Islamic culture really respects and cherishes women. Thank you.